Hey folks, welcome back to Quality Automation Adda. In this video, I am going to explain how to automate AWS batches using a Java Selenium Automation Framework. If you are currently testing AWS batches manually or through tools like Autosys, this video will help you to automate the entire batch workflow and also integrate batch validation as part of your end-to-end web application or API testing so that you achieve complete workflow automation. Before we jump into automation, let me quickly explain how batches work and how we usually test them manually so that we can incorporate the same flow through automation using the best available libraries. In this video, we will particularly focus on a Java Selenium automation framework. In simple words, a batch is a program that runs without user interaction, processes large amount of data and exits after completion. Batch jobs are either scheduled to run at a specific date and time or they can be triggered manually. In most testing scenarios, we trigger them manually and wait for the job to complete before validating the dependent modules. Let me give you a real world example. In an organization, there is a requirement to credit salaries for all employees on the last day of the month at exactly 12 a.m. In this case, assume there is a batch job that runs on the last day of the month at midnight. If you want to test this manually, you need to trigger the batch job, wait for the job to complete its processing, and then validate whether the salaries are correctly credited to employee's bank account. Now, when you want to automate this workflow, imagine the organization has 500 employees. You might roughly predict how long the job will take to complete. But what if the employee count is increases? Maybe the server is too slow or batch job takes longer than expected. You cannot predict. Your automation scripts will fail. Then the question is when and how do you verify in the web application, API or databases that the batch job has correctly processed salaries for all employees? This is the real challenge in batch job automation. To automate such scenarios in test automation framework, particularly using Java Selenium, I have developed an employee management application. This application we can perform UI actions such as adding or deleting employees for different departments. Now, let's consider another example. Assume with this employee management system, there is a requirement where every day, we need to generate department-wise employee reports in CSV or Excel format. For example, department-wise employee count, department-wise average age of an employees. And these reports must be generated, stored securely for future audit purposes. To automate this workflow, I am using AWS batches. We can trigger the batch job manually. For example, I am going to the AWS console, navigating to the AWS batch. You can type it as batch and just click on this batch. This is the AWS batch dashboard. Here, look at the jobs, job definition, job queues. These three are important for us to trigger batch either manually or through automation. This is the jobs where we can submit a new job manually and it is the actual execution request. And we can have multiple job requests based on our requirements. For example, developers create a job to generate salary report, process millions of records. And this is the job definition and it is a blueprint that tells AWS batch what the job is and how it should run. This is the job queue and it is a waiting line where jobs will be sit here until resources are available. AWS batch automatically picks from the queue, creates compute resources, runs the job and shut everything down. Here for demonstration, I will go and run one job manually. For that, click on this job and click on submit new job. Here, you need to provide a job name. You can give any name that suits as per your batch requirement. In my case, it is employee snapshot. Let me type it as emp underscore snapshot and select the job definition. You may see multiple job definition, but developers can provide which job definition is configured for your test batch. In my case, it is quality data batch job revision 2. Let me select this. Next is job queue. Generally, one team maintain one queue or two if it is really required. I have one queue and let me select this. We do not need any other dependencies, so click on next here. This is the configuration override screen and you don't need to change anything here. So click on next. Finally, you will land on the review and submit page. All you need to do is scroll down and click submit job. When you submit a batch, this job go through phases. Go to batch again and you will see batch is processing. Initially, the job is starting from submitted state and it moves to pending state. It may take some time to move from one phase to another. It totally depends on the load the batch is processing. After pending, it will move to runnable and then starting and then running. Finally, it will either go to succeeded or failure. Job may fail due to invalid data or batch configuration. Now you can see the batch is succeeded, and as per my requirement, I need to verify a file generated in the S3 bucket. That is the storage area to save all the file after each batch run. To verify, let me go to S3 bucket. For that, just type it as S3 here and select S3 bucket. You may find multiple buckets created in this page, but click on the bucket created for your batch to store files. In my case, it is quality ADA batch output. Let me click here. Here, you need to select employee snapshot dashboard. Here, you need to select employee snapshot folder and look at the date. In my case, it is this. And I have two files created. Click on one CSV file and you can also download and verify the CSV file output. Let me download it and open. You see that the CSV file is opened department wise, employee count and average age of an employee. This is how we manually trigger the batch job and verify whether the file is created or not on the S3 bucket. Now it's time to automate whatever we done so far manually. Here, the challenging part with the AWS batch or any batch, you need to wait for the batch to complete. We cannot predict when the batch going to complete. So for example, let me go to batch again. Let me select batch. Here, the batch will start with submitted and we have multiple phases. Batch has life cycle to complete. Each phases might take minutes to complete. So for example, one job might take 10 minutes, 20 minutes. It totally depends on the load batch is processing. And this is the challenging part of batch automation. But good part with AWS batch is we can run the batch and wait for the process to complete through automation. And you can add this into your Java Selenium Automation Framework. Let's see how to do it. To implement this, I have created a simple test framework using TestNG framework. Let me go to IntelliJ. This is the simple Java Maven project and you can automate web applications. And mainly this project created to automate AWS batches. And this project code is available on GitHub. Let me take you to the GitHub repository. I will add the repository details in this video description so that you can clone and practice or implement the same way in your company business use cases. Let me come back to the IntelliJ. As I mentioned, this is the Maven project. First, let's see pom.xml and understand what are all the dependencies are required to automate AWS batch for Maven based project. All these dependencies we use for web application automation, and here you see AWS SDK, which is available in Software Amazon AWS SDK. We can use this library to automate AWS batch, and this dependency is for S3. So we can access S3 using this library and to verify whether a file is present or deleted. And these two dependencies required for you to authenticate using your credentials, either using SSO or AWS access key and secret key, that we will see in a minute. That's it. We don't need any other dependencies. And remember, I have implemented this is for TestNG framework and created test script that you can use for BDD Cucumber framework as well. Before we see automation scripts, let me explain how to connect AWS using your credential or access key and secret key. I have documented the steps in README file. Open it. You will see what configurations are required for you to get started. And also you see the architecture of this project. All you need is Java and Maven. Make sure you have the valid Java and Maven configured in your system. And importantly, you need to install AWS CLI. You can download the AWS CLI if you do not have, and make sure that you have configured in your system environmental variable. And I have installed in my system and configured in environmental variable path. Let me verify in the terminal. Open the terminal, or you can open the command prompt as well and verify you have the valid AWS version. I have this AWS CLI that is more than enough to get started. And now the main part is AWS credential configuration. If you are a corporate employee, you need to log in with your username and password. For that, you need to log in to AWS using this AWS configure space SSO. Once you enter, it will prompt you to add your username, password, and also AWS region. AWS region is nothing but go to your AWS console and look for batch job where it is configured. Make sure that this is the AWS region, and in my case it is Mumbai AP-South-1. Now I do not have corporate login credential, it is my personal account. For that, what I need to do is, it is simple, AWS configure and enter. It will ask you to enter your access key. Make sure you are entering the valid access key and valid secret key. Once you enter, it will ask you to select the reason code. Once you enter all this information, click on enter so that your system is configured to access AWS using AWS CLI. I have already configured, so let me just use Ctrl C to terminate this. Now to verify whether I have configured correctly, let me copy this to verify my identity. Let me copy and run. If you see user ID, account and AI run, that's it. You are successfully logged into AWS using AWS CLI. So we are good with the authentication. Now let's see how to automate AWS batch. For that, let me close this and go to source main java com.qualityaddha.automation package and expand AWS package. Here you see AWS Auth Helper, AWS Batch Service, AWS S3 Service. First, let's see AWS Auth Helper class. This class will help you to log in to AWS through SSO, and also you can log in using AWS configure like access key and secret key, and also you can enter the environmental variable details, and here you can find some of the methods will help you to authenticate AWS services. And the next part is how to connect AWS batch and submit the job and monitor the job status and wait for the job to complete. In this class, you can find the code and methods that will connect to AWS services after login. And main important thing is you need to submit the job using batch job name, job queue and job definition. Remember, we have seen what is AWS job, what is job definition, what is job queue. We know how to manually submit the job using AWS console, or if you are using Autosys, it is important that job batch has job name, job definition and job queue. The same way here, you need to pass valid job name, job queue and job definition. Based on this configuration, your automation code will connect to your AWS console or AWS services and submit the job. After that, once you submit the job using job name, job queue and job definition, it's time for you to verify the job ID. Once you submit the job, AWS will create job ID. That job ID will be passed to get the job status, whether the job is in submitted status, pending, runnable, starting, running or succeeded. You can access the job status only using job ID. This is the job ID that we need to get and verify the status completely through automation. And now this is a method to get the job status, and then it will check whether the job is completed or not. It will keep on checking whether the job is in which status. It will wait for the job to succeed or fail. We need to make sure that either job is succeeded or failed. That means job is completed. And the next part is AWS S3 services. This class will help you to verify CSV file are uploaded by the batch job and download output files for validation. This is the constructor will help you to log into AWS S3 bucket with this region that you will be configured in resource config.properties. Here you need to clearly mention what is the job queue, job definition and job name. Similarly, you need to provide the S3 bucket configuration. This is the S3 bucket and this is the folder we are looking for that is configured. And now let's look at the test automation scripts which are present under test package. Expand this. There's a class called AWS Batch Job. This test class has multiple tests in TestNG methods, where first you validate AWS credential. The second test will submit the employee snapshot batch job. Third is monitor the job execution, and finally verify the job completion. You can implement this as a feature file, and the test methods are step definitions. In this class, there is a before class. It will help you to authenticate and log into AWS using the region from the config file. This before class will help you to log into AWS using the AWS region from the config properties. Once the job is completed, you will close the connectivity to AWS. That's it. So it should be in the same priority order where I did not create one test class to automate end-to-end flow. I have created 4 different test methods so that you can implement the same thing in BDD Cucumber project. The first method is to validate AWS credentials and configuration. Once this method understands that you are successfully logged in and authenticated, this method is actually go and submit the batch job using job name, job queue, and job definition. You might also have some other environmental variables that you can configure in JSON file and call it here, and then submit the job. And this job method will extract the job ID, and this job ID you will be using to verify the job status. And this method is actually verify the job status, so it will keep on check the job status and wait for the job completion from this method. This is the method will verify whether the job status in pending, running, runnable, submitted, succeeded, or failed. So we will get the job details, and finally we will verify the job status succeeded. If it is succeeded, that means our job is successful. And finally, we will verify the batch job output in S3 bucket. This is the method will verify the list of batch output files. You can get inside this method. It is actually connecting to AWS, and with the help of bucket name that we are mentioning in the config.properties and the folder, it will collect the submitted CSV file and download it and share with you so that you can automate the process to verify the S3 bucket having the valid and latest employee report. Now let me explain how to execute the end-to-end automation process. I have a test.ng XML. This is pointing to AWS batch job test. So let me right click and execute this XML suite. If you see, the test is started and the job is submitted. If you look at the AWS, just refresh, you should see one job is started, and currently AWS batch services are checking the status, and you see that the job status is submitted, and every 30 seconds, that's what it is configured in the property file. Every 30 seconds it is go and check the status. As per the job lifecycle, pending to runnable, runnable to starting, and you see that currently it is in running status. Job status is still in running status. It will keep on checking for every 30 seconds. As the load to process is very less, I'm expecting this to be completed very soon. See, all tests were executed and it waited for the job to be succeeded. Once it identified the job is succeeded, then it will go to S3 bucket and extract the CSV file. It will store it into your, and it verified the CSV file. Once done, it closing the AWS batch client, and also it is closing the AWS S3 client. That's it. You can also verify the extent report. All tests are pass. This is how we actually go and automate end-to-end automation flow. You can first run the UI tests that are independently executable. After that, you might have a requirement to run the batch job. Once the batch job is completed, you can go and verify the databases or APIs or email. This is how we actually test end-to-end workflow for any business use cases. You can try implement in your project and let me know through comments. If you found this video useful, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I will be sharing more real world automation concepts like this. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.